CEO hurriedly ran back home, but he didn't see his wife come out to greet him. In a fit of anger, he made a mess of the house. Finally, behind a white cloth, he found his wife's memorial tablet, but he still refused to believe his wife had passed away. He thought it was just a trick his wife played to get him back home. It wasn't until he asked the neighbors that he realized his wife had truly passed away. In fact, it was all his own doing. His wife had once loved him deeply, but he treated her like someone who sold herself for money. Even their daughter, the CEO, was convinced she was not his, but the result of an affair between his wife and another man. It was only last month that the CEO discovered his wife's bone marrow matched exactly with his first love's. He immediately demanded his wife donate her bone marrow to his first love. His wife said she was also ill, but the CEO believed it was just an excuse for her not wanting to help his first love. He even threatened her with their daughter's surgery fee. His wife, helpless, agreed. After the surgery, the CEO anxiously held his first love in his arms and arranged for her to stay in a luxurious hospital room, while completely ignoring his wife, saying it was fine as long as she didn't die. The woman, worried about her daughter being left without care, hurried back home after the surgery. Despite her exhaustion, she finally made it home, but collapsed from fatigue. The daughter thought her mother was just sick and used a towel to wipe her face. It was a long time before the woman slowly opened her eyes. The woman felt she might not live much longer. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter being left without anyone to look after her. She asked her daughter to bring the phone and called the CEO. She planned to leave her daughter in his care. When the CEO heard his wife was near death, he thought she was just trying to get more money from him. So, he angrily scolded her, and coldly said donating bone marrow wouldn't kill her. After all, if she could still make a phone call, it meant she wasn't dying yet. Then he hung up. The woman weakly raised her hand and took a final look at her daughter. At this point, the CEO still didn't know his wife had passed away. He called her to discuss getting a divorce next week, because he was going to marry his first love. But there was no sound from the other end of the phone. The daughter said her mother was asleep. She hoped her father could come home to see her and her mother. The CEO thought his wife was pretending to be dead to scare him, so he hung up the phone. The daughter realized her mother was completely unresponsive, and began crying uncontrollably. Her cries quickly attracted the neighbors. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. The neighbors quickly called the property management to pry the door open. They discovered that the woman had passed away. The kind neighbors set up a memorial hall for her, and sent the kidney-failing daughter to the hospital. Perhaps because of the woman's deep resentment, her soul couldn't leave after death. It eventually became a ghost, guarding her daughter's side. From the nurse's conversation, she learned that the CEO hadn't come to the hospital in days. His daughter was about to be transferred to a regular ward due to insufficient funds for the hospital fees, and the CEO had been spending all his time with his first love. He didn't even know which hospital his daughter was in. That day, he returned home to finalize his divorce with his wife. Just as he reached the door, he heard the neighbors say his wife had passed away, and his daughter had been sent to the hospital. It was then that he realized his wife had been telling the truth on the phone, but his first love believed the woman was pretending to be dead, trying to make the CEO change his mind. The CEO, believing his first love, thought his wife didn't want a divorce and had paid the neighbors to deceive him. Furious, he ordered the neighbors to tell his wife that in 3 days, she had to come out and donate bone marrow to his first love again, or he wouldn't pay for his daughter's medical fees. The next day, the CEO ordered his assistant to find out which hospital his daughter was in. Ignoring the nurse's advice, he had his daughter discharged from the hospital. He wanted to use his daughter to lure his wife out. When he heard his daughter say her mother had already passed away, the CEO still wouldn't believe it. He rushed into the house like a madman, shouting his wife's name, asking her to come out. When he lifted the white cloth and saw the memorial hall for his wife, he froze, filled with regret.